Welcome to MogulCast, where we uncover the stories behind the world's greatest business empires. Let's get into today's story. June 18, 2020. Wirecard's auditor, EY, drops a bomb, $1.9 billion in cash, supposedly held in two Philippine banks, does not exist. The stock crashes 99% in 3 days. The CEO, Markus Braun, is arrested. The COO, Jan Marsalek, flees to Russia. And Germany's most celebrated Fintech is exposed as a fraud. This is the full story. And it is worse than you think. It started in 1999 in a small office in Munich. Markus Braun, a former consultant, joined Wirecard as CEO in 2002. He had a vision: turn a niche payment processor into a global fintech empire. By 2005, Wirecard was listed on the Frankfurt Stock Exchange. But one decision, made in 2006, would later unravel everything. We will come back to that. Braun's strategy was simple: acquire first, ask questions later. Wirecard bought companies in Asia, the Middle East, and Latin America, often paying premiums for obscure firms. The goal? Show explosive growth. By 2018, Wirecard was worth $28 billion, joining Germany's prestigious DAX index. But not everyone was convinced. A small group of short sellers began digging. And what they found would shock the world. Wirecard's rise was meteoric. In 2015, it replaced Commerzbank in the DAX 30. By 2019, it was processing payments for giants like IKEA and Aldi. The media called it Germany's PayPal. Investors poured in. But beneath the surface, something was rotten. The company's Asian operations, supposedly its crown jewel, were a black box. And Braun's obsession with growth was about to backfire. Wirecard's business model was built on trust. It processed payments for online merchants, taking a cut of every transaction. But its real edge? It claimed to handle high-risk clients, gambling, pornography, even illegal activities, that banks wouldn't touch. This niche made Wirecard indispensable. But not everyone was celebrating. In 2019, the Financial Times published a series of explosive reports. And the company's response? Deny, attack, repeat. Here is what the media completely got wrong about Wirecard: it wasn't just a payment processor. It was a shadow bank. The company lent money to merchants, processed their payments, and even held their deposits. This vertical integration was supposed to be its genius. But it also meant Wirecard could manipulate its own books, moving money between accounts to hide losses. And that's exactly what it did. The first cracks appeared in 2015. A whistleblower inside Wirecard's Singapore office tipped off authorities about fake transactions. The company denied everything. Then, in 2019, the Financial Times published documents showing Wirecard's Asian subsidiaries were inflating revenues. The stock plunged. But Braun had a plan: blame the messenger. He sued the FT, hired private investigators, and even got German regulators to open a probe into the journalists. The crisis exploded on January 30, 2019. The FT published internal Wirecard documents showing $1.9 billion in cash, supposedly held in escrow, might not exist. Wirecard stock dropped 40% in a day. Braun called it fake news. But the damage was done. Investors demanded answers. And the company's auditor, EY, was about to deliver the final blow. June 18, 2020. EY refuses to sign off on Wirecard's 2019 accounts. The reason? The $1.9 billion in cash, supposedly held in two Philippine banks, cannot be verified. Wirecard stock collapses. Braun resigns. The next day, he is arrested. And Jan Marsalek. He flees to Russia, where he remains a fugitive. The fraud was exposed. But the fallout was just beginning. The $1.9 billion wasn't missing, it never existed. Wirecard had been fabricating revenues for years, using fake clients and forged documents. The fraud was so brazen, it fooled auditors, regulators, and even Germany's financial elite. And if you've made it this far, you already understand something most analysts completely missed: this wasn't just a fraud. It was a failure of the entire system. Wirecard's collapse sent shockwaves through global finance. Regulators in Germany, the EU, and beyond were forced to overhaul oversight. The DAX index changed its rules to prevent another Wirecard. And investors? They learned a brutal lesson: even the most trusted companies can be built on lies. But the real legacy? The man at the center of it all is still free. Remember that decision we mentioned at the start? In 2006, Braun decided to expand Wirecard's Asian operations, fast. The problem? The region's lax regulations made it the perfect place to hide fraud. By 2018, 50% of Wirecard's revenues came from Asia. And when the fraud was exposed, those operations were the first to crumble. Here is what it actually cost: $28 billion in market value, wiped out in days. The whistleblower who first exposed Wirecard's fraud? A former employee named Pav Gill. The Financial Times reporting. Based on leaked documents from inside the company. The $1.9 billion never existed. The COO, Jan Marsalek. Still a fugitive in Russia. And Markus Braun? Awaiting trial in Germany. These are the numbers behind the collapse. Here is the lesson most people missed: Wirecard wasn't just a fraud, it was a symptom. A symptom of a financial system that rewards growth at any cost. A system where auditors, regulators, and even governments are too slow to act. And a system where the truth only comes out when it's too late. The question is, who's next? The Wirecard scandal is far from over. Marsalek is still free. Braun's trial is ongoing. And the $1.9 billion? Still missing. But the story doesn't end here. If you want to understand how this pattern repeats across every major business collapse, the next video covers a story with disturbing parallels. That one is next. That's the story for today on MogulCast. If you found this valuable, subscribe and hit the bell. A new Empire story drops every single weekday. See you tomorrow.